Hello, and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read-Along. Our guest today is Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Ozier Muhammad, whose work has appeared in the New York Times, Newsday, Jet, and Ebony. You can follow him on Twitter at OZMUHA, Ozmuha. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan, the Marshall Loeb Professor at the Stony Brook School of Journalism and co-founder of Digimentors, a digital and virtual events consultancy. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and our Digimentors website. My name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read-Along and occasional guest host. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have a great show planned. Ozier has been taking photographs for almost 40 years, focusing on Africa and African Americans, the African American experience. He's covered everything from famine in Africa, which he won a Pulitzer Prize for, and the Obama campaign, and everything in between. So we are going to review some of his work, talk about his career. Of course, we'll also talk about the Sunday New York Times and review what's in the news today. Some special reports, including a major report on when police see cars as weapons and how they respond. A really incredible report on the front page of the New York Times today. There's also a special section on rethinking kind of what America and our institutions, etc. So we'll take a look at that as well. Let's say hello to some of the folks joining us this morning. We have Jonathan Borstein saying hello from the East Village. Jonathan, always great to see you. Doug Levy joining us from Marin County, California. I always make a point of saying this. It's 5:30 in the morning there, and it's an hour back. So I don't know how that affected things. Hopefully, folks weren't looking for our show at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're of course on a little later in the rest of the world. It's 1 p.m. GMT start time, 1:30 p.m. start time, and 7 p.m. start time in India. Diane Stefani is joining us from Margate, New Jersey. Patricia Freudenberg is joining us from Long Island, New York. Patricia, happy birthday. I believe it was yesterday. Another go around the sun, right? Thank you very much. My mom is joining from Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. Mom, thank you so much. Always great to at least talk to you a little bit on Sundays, right? And we have Sajid Khan joining us as well. Linda Lawrence from Chile, Long Island. My sister is joining from Bellevue, Washington. It's also 5:30 in the morning there. Amy, good to see you. Hopefully you're going to enjoy today's show. We're going to be focusing on photography, among other things. Jess Esch is joining us from Portland, Maine, a former United Way colleague of mine and now a regular on watching the show. So thank you, Jess. So without further ado, let's bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan. Hi, Sri. How are you? Good to see you. Just need to get, there we go. Just don't have your microphone just yet.
Good morning, everybody.
And you might have to stop the camera on. There's a newspaper that he's going to show us.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the papers in just a bit. Yeah, so.
Absolutely.
Well, hello, everyone, and great to be here, and great to see all of you. Sandra is watching from West Virginia. We have a terrific show today with our Ozier Muhammad. So please stay tuned. Please tag a friend. They can watch live or later from wherever they are in the world. This will play immediately after we're done on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So please do share that. Stefan says, good morning, Sri, Neil, and Read-Along family. So thrilled about this one. It was an honor to edit Ozier's photos over the years. My friend, colleague, and just wonderful human being. How great is that? Stefan used to be a New York Times photo editor for 20 years. So great to have you, Stefan, here. Sunny's watching from the DMV area of Maryland, and Maryland specifically. So welcome, Sunny.
DC, Maryland, Virginia.
Yeah, I had to learn that. I learned that from you, Neil, and from Sunny. Yeah. You're in Washington, Virginia. Yeah.
And my sister is wishing everyone a happy Diwali, Indian New Year. It was Diwali last week. Thursday, I think, was the main day, and Friday, of course, New Year's. Thank you, Amy.
And Seishu is watching. Seishu, great photographer, watching from Connecticut. And I'm glad you're here. Tell all your photo friends, tag them, folks, and they can watch live or later. And Therese is watching from Yonkers. Welcome, Therese. Great to have you here. Great supporter that you are of the show and all the things that we do at Digimentors. So let's remind everyone what Digimentors is. This is the company that Neil and I work together on, along with all our friends, Paula and Carla as well. We do social and digital consulting, conferences, summits, webinars, talk shows, training and workshops. If you'd like an event like this for you, or a talk show like this, or you have a hybrid event that you're planning for 2022, please let us know. We'd love to talk to you about it. You can see our email addresses right on the screen. So please get in touch. And we couldn't do this without our Digimentors team. And Neil is our executive producer at Neil Parekh. Paula Kiger is at Big Green Pen. Carla Barnock is at Kabara. And Steve Taylor is at Steve DeRive and at Julia L. Weeks. You'll see that the work we do on this show is different from your average Zoom call. What we're doing is annotating the show and bringing in new features to make the stories that we show you stand out. So that's why we're so happy that you're all here. And we want to thank our sponsors, our friends at Muckrack. Check out muckrack.com. And they are such a great service for journalists as well as PR people. And if you're a journalist, you should get a free verified account where you can put your articles in your portfolio. And we'd love to have more sponsors. So if you have a story to tell, please reach out to us. You see our address on the screen. We have more people watching from other places. Ted's checking in from Washington, D.C. Hi, Ted. Welcome. And we have Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar is here. Good morning, she says, to all, especially the marathoners who are out in New York City today running all 5 boroughs. It's so cool that that's happening today. It means if you are in the city, you can get a glimpse of them perhaps, or just watch it on TV like I like to do and not step out on the marathon day. It's pretty cool here today. It's 46 degrees. I was just checking the temperature. And it's a beautiful looking day. I was going to try and show you the window, Neil, but I don't think I could quite.
A little hard.
So
special shout out to our friend Liza Donnelly, who is running the. There's a window shot for you.
There you go.
A special shout out to our friend Liza Donnelly, who's running the marathon today, and two high school friends of mine, Josh and Amishi, are running. Josh Lasser and Amishi Shah. Amishi was Amy's best friend growing up in high school. So kudos to them for running the marathon. Ellen Austin is saying hello from New York City as well.
And we should tell everyone that Dr. Chandrasekhar has a terrific show that we help produce for her. And it's called She's on Call. And it'll be on at 11 a.m. Eastern. What an important topic today. Prostate cancer as well as men's sexual health. So everyone should tune in, and they will, Dr. Meena Korean and Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar will have Dr. Sophia Kamran and Ashley Winter. So an all-female doctors panel today at 11 a.m. Eastern. Please follow them on all the channels. Tell your friends how important this topic is. They should definitely be watching.
Absolutely. And that's great. So what we can do, and Paula's already sharing a link to some of Liza's live drawings from the marathon right in Facebook. So thank you, Paula, for doing that. And a quick hello from Wayne Camadoy. Wayne saw a lot of Ozier's images during the Yankees World Series runs of the Jeter era when he worked nights in sports. Wow, Wayne, you're speaking my language. That's great. Thank you for your support of the show, Wayne, for all of the help you've given, sharing content, giving us a heads up on special sections. and sharing some of the work that you've done with Ozier as well. Thank you so much.
All right, let's get started. Maybe we can look at the paper. There's still people coming in, and Stefan's tagging his friends. Everyone tag a photographer you like. They can watch this live or later.
Absolutely.
And here is the front page of the paper. And Ellen says, by the way, New York Times seems not to have printed the obituaries. At least I'm missing my A to L in my paper, delivered this AM. So I'm not sure what's happening there. Pradnya says, good morning from Silver Spring. Hello. And Stefan also tagged Dana Kennedy, the former administrator of the Pulitzer Prizes and former New York Times editor. So
Absolutely.
I'm sure she knows Ozier as well. All right, so let's take a look at the print newspaper. I do want to show you, we'll not be reviewing it, but Sotheby's has a 144-page ad in the paper, which is something else. So we're going to put that away, and we're going to look at the paper, the lead story here.
And just a quick shout out, Sri David Gonzalez is joining us, another friend of Stefan and Ozier's, an incredible photographer based in the Bronx. And David wrote a great piece about Ozier in the paper as a retrospective when Ozier left. So thank you, David, for joining us.
And Harris is watching. She says, I'm back in New York City after being in Vermont and New Hampshire for a year and a half. And David says he loves Ozier. So that's great.
Absolutely. All right, we'll get back to the paper.
Everyone just stay tuned. You're going to see him in just a minute. All right, let's look at the paper. When police call a car a weapon, a Times investigation found that some officers had put themselves in danger when they shot. Others appeared to face no peril. A common defense in fatal shootings, but officers often aren't at risk. So that's an interesting story. In rural areas, prospects sink for Democrats. Bottom may be zero among white voters. Just think about that, folks, where we are in this country. The bottom may be zero. How bill to fix infrastructure survived brawl. President hails a win. Black caucus opens path for factions to agree on $1 trillion plan. Texas concert ends in chaos and an 8th death. Very sad story. Crossing New York on two wheels. Two reporters take a spin on the sprawling new 750-mile Empire State Trail. Can a lone turtle save Puerto Rico's beaches? Some of you know that I go to Puerto Rico quite a lot and love the island, and so I want to read this story. And America's economy is strong, even if it doesn't feel that way. Jobs are available, but inflation is making people uneasy. So that's the front page. The arts section is A Star's Princess Diaries. Kristen Stewart is drawing Oscar talk for a provocative portrayal of Diana in Spencer. And the Global Dream Lab. All around the world, the pandemic provokes strange nocturnal visions. Can they help shed light on the age-old question of why we dream at all? By Brooke Jarvis. That's in the magazine. Let's see what else we can quickly look at. There's a special edition of Opinion. Snap out of it, America. Our once relentlessly inventive country has settled for sclerotic politics and modest ambitions. It's time to dream big again. There's a special section featuring bold ideas to revitalize and renew the American experiment. Under Katie Kingsbury, they're doing such inventive work at the opinion section of the Times, and we're so glad to see this. Some of you can go back in our archives on YouTube and watch our interview with Andy Rosenthal, who was on the New York Times Read Along. He was an editor of opinion. He was the editor of the opinion section for many, many years. Book review cover is The Marriage Plot by Jennifer Egan. The book is called Oh, William by Jennifer Stout. Metropolitan cover is Biking the Majestic Empire State Trail that we talked about earlier. Look at these photographs. I really want to talk to Ozier about how photography has changed in the New York Times over so many, many years. All right, real estate cover is a Harlem landmark demolished. On Astor Row, an 1883 home is lost to decades of neglect and missed opportunities. This is 28 West 138th Street, not too far from where I am. Arts and Leisure cover is, I can't tell who that is, Benedict Cumberbatch, Cowboy. He discusses the warping effects of masculinity in The Power of the Dog. And I know Rupa, my wife, and others will be horrified that I didn't recognize this as Benedict. For some reason, I thought it might be Mario Cuomo, except for those eyes. All right, let's keep going. And I duck as I say that because I'm sure I'm getting lots of evil eyes sent at me. Okay. Anxious, avoidance, secure. What is your attachment style? The pandemic and TikTok have led to a new life for a gripping analysis of relationships published over a decade ago. And donation and circumstances, a mood of cautious optimism at Prairie View A&M, where Mackenzie Scott gave millions. And finally, Sunday Review. The cover is The Promise of the Past. Can Ancient Civilization Show Us How to Create a More Equal World? By David Graeber and David Wengrow. That's really provocative because we know the ancient world in most civilizations was nothing if not unequal. So how can they teach us that? I don't know. We'll find out. I think with that, we're ready to welcome onto our stage here our friend Ozier Muhammad. And we should tell everyone he's Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist who has worked for the New York Times, Newsday, Jet, and Ebony. This is the Sunday New York Times read-along. The time has changed in America because of daylight savings, and so we might be at a different time than where you're used to seeing us. But welcome, and we are so excited to have with us Ozier Muhammad, and we have so much to talk about with Ozier today. So thank you all for being here.
And thank you for welcoming me and inviting me to be on the show. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Ozier, thank you so much. We're really, really glad to have you here. We'll bring Sri back in just a moment. But the first thing, before we get into your photography, before we get into your career, really just want to ask, as we do all of our guests, over the last year and a half with COVID, how have you been? How's your friends and family been? How have you survived? We're hoping things have been okay for you.
For the most part, my wife and I have been fine after experiencing COVID in different degrees. My wife was much sicker than I. Of course, we've lost at least one family member and a couple of friends to COVID, but for the most part, I think we're out of a dark tunnel and we're doing okay at this point.
I'm sorry to hear that you went through such a difficult time, but also glad that you both made it through as far as your health is concerned.
Thank you so much.
It really has been a dark tunnel. It looks like there's some hope, particularly with the kids vaccine coming out. And my daughter is 8, so we're looking forward to getting that as soon as possible. But thank you for sharing that. And of course, our condolences on your losses over this last year and a half. And there's Sri is back. With Sri, we need your audio.
Good morning, Sri.
So we'll just great. So I'll just keep it going, Ozier. So thank you again for joining us. And
again, my pleasure.
I wanted to make sure folks know and kind of one of the highlights of having Ozier on, and we've had several other winners as well, but Ozier is a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer. He shared an award for his work at Newsday with Josh Friedman, Dennis Bell, covering Africa, famine in Africa back in 1985. So Ozier, before we go into your the photographs that you've shared with us, tell us a little bit about your work covering Africa and the Pulitzer Prize in particular.
Well, that experience was at Newsday, as you mentioned. It was with the late Dennis Bell. Unfortunately, we lost him at least 25 years ago. And Josh Friedman. It was a pretty serious endeavor on the part of Newsday, a very substantial commitment, and with all kinds of resources and preparations to take a look at the Sahel region, which is just south of North Africa. And we started out in West Africa, taking a look along the French-speaking countries like Mali and Niger, also Burkina Faso. And then our intention was to eventually head for Ethiopia, because we had heard that the Ethiopian government under Haile Mariam Mengistu was about to celebrate the 10th anniversary of its transition into communism. And at the same time, with that transition into communism, with that anniversary, the government was also dealing with some strife in the north and the east, the Eritrea region, Tigray, in the east in the Ogaden, and at the same time, it was also dealing with a crop failure because of a drought. So there was a massive amount of starvation and deaths caused by all the impacts of all that. And we were in Africa for about 2 months. It was late in the year, and as soon as we heard that we could get into Ethiopia, we left West Africa after we had done a considerable amount of reporting, and went into Ethiopia and spent about a month there reporting on the famine, which was compounded by a neglect of the government and also by drought. So it was a political and a natural catastrophe, kind of a double whammy.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
What I want to do is go through some of the photographs that you shared with us.
Okay.
And then we'll highlight. We know you have a show at a gallery in New York City, so we'll encourage people to go there as well. But let's dig into the photographs first, and tell us just a little bit about each one as we go.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is a street baptism in central Harlem in the mid-90s. I believe it's 1994. And this street baptism was just part of a church-wide event, a national event, with every August a United House of Prayer for all people, which is mostly concentrated on the East Coast and some churches in the Midwest. In August, there's a street baptism, and on this Sunday, the House of Prayer met, and they brought out water cannons, and the minister preached a sermon, and they just basically were involved in this ritual here. So that's what this is, and the kid is the one who caught my eye, because the kid was holding a trombone missing the slide, and he was very enthusiastically pretending, or perhaps deliberately, playing the trombone. Sure. This is a photograph in which was taken on the corner of 125th Street and 7th Avenue, of a kid headed for that very same church. I spent a lot of time over the decades photographing my community. I live in Harlem, so I occasionally, at least in the 80s and 90s, I would just walk around the neighborhood with my camera, and if something caught my eye, I would try to work it and make something out of it.
And you're originally from Chicago.
Yes, right? Yes, I am.
So what did it mean to you to move to Harlem and be in the center, the historical center of the Black community there?
Well, Harlem is sort of considered the center of ground zero for African American historically in the realm of its intelligentsia, in the realm of its culture. So it meant a lot to me growing up in Chicago to at least learn about the history of this community, and also to hopefully at one time to visit it. And not only have those desires been fulfilled, but also now I've lived here for over 3 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is more photography from Harlem. This is outside the famed Apollo Theater.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a photograph of a guy who was somewhat of a fixture on 125th Street near the Apollo. A guy who called himself Dancing Harry. I have no idea what his real name was or is. I haven't seen him in years, but in the 90s he was constantly in that spot, about somewhere around that area, and he brought out a board, a panel, and he had a collection, tin, and he had a boombox, and he would play the music of the soul singer James Brown, and he had these wonderful moves, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is he dancing
Yes.
on a? It's flat, right? It almost looks like an optical illusion. I guess his tip jar is in front.
Yes, indeed. Yes. He was sliding and twirling and pirouettes and etc. He was well regarded and well known by the regulars along 120th Street.
But he's dancing on flat ground. I just want to make sure that it's an optical illusion that we're looking at, right?
It wasn't intended as an optical illusion. Actually, this is the first time I've ever heard anyone reference it as such.
I mean, is it just my eye? Do you see it as well? Like it looks.
I can see it now. I certainly can see it now. But before, it never occurred to me that.
I mean, when you look at it,
perceived as such.
Keep looking at photographs. You'll always see something different, right? As a reminder, the New York Times Read-Along airs every week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Our guest today is Ozier Muhammad, a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer. We are so thrilled to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
And I wanted to just there's a quick shout out. Randall is saying, glad that you're here. Looking forward to the discussion. And as well, earlier, Stefan offered his condolences when we were talking about COVID and the impact it had. So I want to make sure that we
thank you so much for sharing that.
Shared that. Yeah. So let's keep going. More pictures from Harlem, right?
Yeah. This is another photograph from the United House of Prayer community. I spent a lot of time in the community and would go to Sunday sermons, and always was moved by not so much the sermon itself, but by the reaction of the parishioners. And at this moment, this woman was kind of carried away by the spirit of not just, I guess, perhaps the sermon, but also by the very famous trombone choir there at the United House of Prayer here in Harlem. Yeah.
And then this shot is it's. I mean the tones, the darker look is just really stunning. What's happening here?
Yeah, what was happening here was I was meandering around 125th Street at night. It wasn't that late at night, but it was after the rush hour, maybe around 8 p.m. And this lone individual, a member of the Nation of Islam, was selling or offering up the final call, which is the Nation of Islam journal that comes out every week and is still in constant publication. And what struck me about it is that it seems so desolate that this gentleman was out there trying to offer up the paper, and there was no one near him in which seemed receptible to buying the paper. It was just a kind of a strange moment for me, and the lights and the kind of the tableau it really made him stand out, and it gave it a very, to me, a substantial impact of the desolation of that hour, trying to attempt to do what he was trying to do, and not having much in the way of someone, to actually buy the paper.
And you mentioned the Nation of Islam. We should take this point, and I share this in the Twitter thread I put out for the show.
Yeah.
Your grandfather it was Elijah Muhammad.
That's right. I'm one of the grandchildren of Elijah Muhammad. I grew up in the Nation of Islam, and it's certainly it's a very important part of my upbringing and how I was shaped as an individual.
Absolutely. And this is a quote that you had in a story, in a piece that Deborah Willis had in the Times on Black photographers' self-portraits from sources of self-regard, self-portraits from Black photographers reflecting on America, talking about, reading about the Harlem Renaissance, seeing Malcolm X up close, etc. And this photograph that was with that piece is a self-portrait. I mean, the composition, reading the biography. I'm assuming that's a Nation of Islam headquarters or something behind you.
It is the location of Temple Number 7, which was where Malcolm X preached during his, but it's not the original location. The original location was elsewhere. But this is Temple Number 7, the temple for the Manhattan community of the Nation of Islam.
And was this in fact a self-portrait, or?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Which hand are you using to take the picture? I'm kind of.
Oh, I used a remote trick.
A remote. You had the picture camera set up and then just clicked it.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. No, it's a. I mean, that's the professional way to do a selfie, I think. Instead of trying to arch your hand around and reach out and do that kind of thing. Miriam Berkeley mentioned earlier, I want to share that not only are you a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer, you're also the American Photography, or she called the American Photography Archives Group Pulitzer Prize-winning African-American photographer. So that's great. And she also made a comment that, of course, the Nation of Islam began in Chicago, where I guess where you were born, or assume that your grandfather lived initially. Is that?
Yeah, both are true. Yeah, I was born in Chicago, and my grandfather was born in Jim Crow South, and a very extremely brutal and time of terror. So he came from Georgia, like so many of my family on both sides, the patriarchal side of my family. And
Carla is pointing out no selfie stick for.
No selfie stick. Yeah,
I'm anti-selfie stick as well. Let's go back to some of the photographs. This one is some basketball.
Yeah, that was taken in near where I grew up, where I spent most of my formative years in the Chatham neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. This is King Park. I'm sorry, this is Cole Park. I was recently corrected, and I was told by a friend that, Ozier, that caption is incorrect. It's not King Park, it's Nat King Cole Park. And,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And this is something I came across as I meandered through my own community, looking to make photographs of the community. And these young guys were playing pickup basketball. I call them young guys, but they were older than me at the time. I think I was about 20 years old when I made this picture.
And you're not one to shy away from pictures of young men playing basketball. Here's another shot that I found doing a little research.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I wish I wish I had a copy of it. This is when I worked for Jed and Ebony. I had the good fortune of being asked to join Jesse Jackson to go to his home in South Shore, Chicago, because he was going to play one-on-one with Marvin Gaye. And so I, spent a little time doing that, and I wish I had gone straight back to the office and made some archival prints of it, but it didn't happen.
That was when I saw that picture. That was pretty impressive. Really love that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the other photos, and these are all photos that are part of your gallery exhibit, which we'll talk about in just a minute.
Sure.
But keep telling us stories.
Yeah, this photograph here was taken in Chicago at a methadone clinic for former heroin addict drug abusers, and it was a group therapy session going on at the time. This was I was a freelancer at this point, freelancing for Ebony. And I was asked if I would go to this clinic and try to illustrate some photographs for a story that had already been written. And so I spent about an hour there. And during this group session, all the participants were supposed to express something or talk about something. And this woman, former addict, said she would like to offer up a gospel song. And if my memory serves me right, I think she sang Precious Lord. Is a famous gospel song, at least in the African American community, by one of the stalwarts of gospel music, Thomas Dorsey, of whom I also photographed before I joined the magazine.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
This next shot coming up.
Mm-hmm.
This is from your work in Africa.
Yeah, this is for Newsday. This is probably the most iconic picture from the time that Belle Friedman and I spent in Ethiopia. And this is a photograph of a young girl. She could not have been more than, say, 12 years old. And she was being weighed at a dislocation camp. And I think this was Central Ethiopia. Let me put it that way, Central Ethiopia, and this was managed by Doctors Without Borders. And the child was clutching a biscuit, and basically she was being weighed to see if the nutritional program that she was on was benefiting her.
And this is another shot.
Yeah, this was a region. This is from a region that's actually in the news now. It's Tigray province. This is the township of Mekelle, and this is another dislocation camp where which was managed by World Vision.
Mm-hmm.
And this was taken in 1985 on a return trip. It was Friedman and I returned in '85 to update the story, and this child was being fed by her mother.
Got it. Yeah. Now, coming out of that work in terms of covering famine, this is a picture of a church auxiliary group.
Exactly. Yeah, an auxiliary group. At the time, it was during the presidential campaign, the non-racial at first post-apartheid presidential election in South Africa, and this was a campaign stop. I think this is Boksburg, just north of Johannesburg. And Nelson Mandela was giving a campaign speech here, and the women. This was done for the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
giving a campaign speech, and the this auxiliary group, the women were earnestly some were earnestly taking notes of his campaign speech.
And this is in terms of your body of work covering not just Harlem, but the African American community in general, South Africa, Haiti. I mean, just all over. A lot of history, and of course, this is a picture of then President-elect Nelson Mandela and the two men who would go on to be his deputies, Thabo Mbeki and former President F.W. de Klerk.
That's right. Yeah, this was in Pretoria. I think it was May 10th. I looked it up the other day because I knew it was May, but I couldn't remember the exact date. May 10th, in which the inauguration took place in Pretoria. The ceremony, I believe, always takes place in Pretoria. And as you can see, there was at least a display of congeniality and forward-looking, kind of demeanor.
Somewhat evocative of the picture of President Carter and Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat in front of the White House when they signed those.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
The composition.
Yeah.
The president looking to one side. I mean, I'd have to look at the picture. And maybe Paula can do a quick check for me. President Carter may have been looking to the right as well. I mean, it might be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Patricia Freudenberg asks, it seems like you prefer candid shots over posed pictures. Do you do any portrait photography as well, or is it all action?
Oh, I've had to do portrait photography, and I'm not. I don't think that's like in my wheelhouse. I think I'm better at kind of the spontaneity of the moment and letting life unfold. I think that's what I prefer. But I do find portraiture or actually manipulating the moment, setting up a shot in essence, to be very challenging and gratifying if it's successful. Sometimes it turns out to be a clinker, but when it's successful, it's very gratifying.
That's interesting. Here is, we'll just show real quickly that shot that I was referring to from President Carter, just to show the parallel.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very famous moment there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's keep going with the rest of your photography. Now we're moving into color. So this is kind of the Wizard of Oz effect, right? We were black and white up till 1994 or so. And the rest of these pictures, this is a celebration of Mandela's birthday.
Yeah, it was July 18th, which is now recognized as International Nelson Mandela Day. And this was in a township, Alexandra, a township which is just outside of Johannesburg. It's like, an easy commute from there to Johannesburg. And this is the first place in which Mandela lived after he left his birth section of the country, some part of the Transkei, in which he was born, and now he's buried. And he was in hospital at the time. This was of course, it was July 18th, his birthday, and the jubilation and the partying and festival-like atmosphere was quite something to behold.
Absolutely. It's certainly. I mean, the story. I had the chance to hear Nelson Mandela speak when he came to New York. He was at Yankee Stadium.
Yes.
And that was certainly a highlight for me, a life highlight. I know that Sri as well. He was at he went to South Africa and had the chance to visit some of the places, including Robben Island, etc. Did a
Yes.
family trip there.
Yeah.
So definitely means a lot. Now this is an interesting photo.
Yeah.
Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, these young men used their bodies as campaign posters. This was in Lagos, Nigeria in 1999, I believe it was, sometime in late February. And it was a presidential election, and the two final candidates were Olusegun Obasanjo and a man named Olu Falai. And these folks, these young men here, were very kind of, in a very clever way, used their bodies as campaign posters for Falai. They might have been paid. I'm not sure they were enthusiastic supporters, but they certainly were clever in the way in which they adorned their bodies and wore those sunglasses. This is Lagos. Uh, uh, Falai did not win this election. Obasanjo was eventually elected the president.
It's certainly a very very evocative and just in terms of the imagery and looking at the various pictures you have, certainly stands out.
Yeah.
We have just a couple more that we want to review with you before we talk about the rest of your work and get to the paper as well.
Yeah. This is another Times photograph here. Yeah.
Yeah, this is stateside, right?
Yeah, this is stateside. This is local, very local. This is City College, where a swearing-in ceremony was taking place for new citizens, and
Yeah.
And just the way everything came together, for my, I was very gratified with the way this image came together. Give me
Sure.
this privilege of making something somewhat dynamic.
Now, was this? I'm curious because when you're taking group pictures, it's often they're quick. Unless you're the official photographer for an event, it's kind of hard to get everyone's attention and look here and get eyes, etc. Was this a quick snap, or was this a posed shot?
Of course, it's never a quick snap. I did meditation and chanting and everything, to make this work.
No, I mean, if it's a news event, right? You can't you don't have the control of the
no, you don't.
the crowd.
You just go with the flow, and I was just one of many photographers there, and one thing in a moment of actualities where something is just happening, and you're supposed to be there as a reporter. I wouldn't ask anyone to look this way.
Sure.
So I basically just took a small fraction of a moment and click the shutter to make the image. So yeah, it just came for me. In my opinion, I think this picture worked for me, and I hope it worked for others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are just a few more pictures, and then I'm going to get
Sure.
to a question from our friend Therese Steiner.
Okay.
Talk about intimate moments and access. This was before he was elected president.
Yeah.
Barack Obama.
Yes. He's with his campaign manager, David Axelrod, and this was just after coming from Iowa, where they were riding a crest of euphoric feelings after winning in Iowa. And we had just gone through the holidays and traveled to New Hampshire. This was in Hanover.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while, a few weeks I was traveling with the press corps with the candidate. And it took me a few weeks to do this on the behalf of the New York Times, and that is to managed to spend some time, just myself and the candidate, instead of other photographers, just myself and Senator Obama. Finally, I negotiated that time, and it was in New Hampshire just after the victory in Iowa. And so I was on his bus, the bus that met him at the airport, and he was, I guess he was, I'm pretty sure he was reading his remarks that he would make at a church in the parking lot of that church in Hanover, just before he addressed the crowd. It was an overflow crowd. Everyone could not get in that church, so he addressed the folks standing outdoors, and it was very cold, January in New Hampshire. And then we went inside, and I bumped into my friend Gwen Eiffel, who was there for, I think she was still with NBC at the time. I said hello.
Sure.
We chatted a bit.
And our friend Stefan Kaplan is noting that going with the flow is what you do. It comes from experience.
Yeah. I would like to add something to this, and also that it's very tough photographing presidential candidates. I guess, or anyone on that level. Well, presidential candidates, it's not a lot of fun because there's a lot of stagecraft involved. So I don't think photographers or reporters are their mission isn't to embarrass candidates.
Sure.
That's not our mission. But sometimes you feel that that's the perception that a candidate may have, even on Obama. And it's sort of, the stagecraft is pretty intense. And you wish you could kind of get these politicians, in a situation that doesn't involve so much stagecraft, and that's a rare opportunity nowadays. It's really very, very tough to do.
Sure. I want to let folks know, and Paula will share this in the comments. There's a great video that we don't have time to watch today, but I would encourage people to watch. This is On Assignment with Ozier Muhammad. This was during the People's Climate March. And we had a Times staffer interview you as you were working the crowd, looking for your shots, having difficulty uploading photos back in the day. So if Paula can share this, certainly encourage people to watch that video when you get a chance, because I thought it was fascinating to watch. All of these photos, except for I think the Obama one, I think I added that in as a bonus. All these photos are part of an exhibit at the Keith DeLillis Gallery that we want to let folks know about. The Keith DeLillis Gallery is in Manhattan on 41st East 57th Street, and this exhibit is open until December 4th. Ozier Muhammad, Events That Changed the World. You can see one of the pictures that we shared just now on the screen in the promo. So definitely want to encourage folks to check that out. It's worth putting a mask on and going and visiting. Certainly, it's definitely worth the trip. And then we also want to make sure that folks know about your website. The just incredible amount of photography that you have on your site. If anyone wants more, there's a slideshow right on the front, and then you have all these galleries: Duke Ellington in Chicago, Haiti, jazz, South Africa, Robben Island, specifically Obama. We didn't get to the pictures of Haiti or Zuccotti Park, the Occupy Wall Street movement. So, elections in Nigeria. So definitely check this out when you get a chance. That's, again, oziermuhammad.com is the website, and we can put that up. That's right, for folks to go visit. Ozier, I have to say, in doing the research for the show and having the pleasure of talking with you, just absolutely bowled over in terms of the breadth of your work, but then also certainly as someone who is, who loves photography, you know, just completely impressed. Hats off to you in terms of your work. Really, really have enjoyed looking through that. I want to bring up this
Thank you so
shot we
much.
talked
Yeah,
about,
thank you.
South Africa, and bring Sri back on.
Mhm.
Sri, hopefully we have your audio.
Yeah, we do.
Great, great.
Hi, Ozier. I was just watching a master class from a terrific
Thank
photographer, and Neil has a great way of pulling out stories, especially about photography. So I was just sitting back and enjoying that. And
you.
this is a photo that we were talking about earlier, or you folks were talking about earlier, when on this trip with our friends May Fong and Andrew Lee, who have both been guests on the show. We got to meet Ila Gandhi, who is a former MP and anti-apartheid activist and granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi.
Wow.
And this is in Durban at the Phoenix Farm, and we got to interview her. We did a live video that's still on my Facebook. You can, if you search Ila Gandhi and Sri, you'll find it. It was very moving, and I was just struck, Ozier, that I met Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter, and now and we've met before, of course, but
Yes.
Elijah Muhammad's grandson,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've met the grandchildren of other famous people as well. What is that like to have that legacy in your family of someone of that stature? And there are many people who don't understand Elijah Muhammad and his legacy. So talk about that for a minute, please.
Yeah. It is. It's unfortunate if people don't understand the legacy of Elijah Muhammad because of the history of Africans in this country. Just looking at the 1619 project.
Mhm.
But the legacy has meant a lot to me. It certainly has infused my work. Most certain way in which I've been motivated to photograph people in the African diaspora. I've had great opportunities to do that. And when I started out, when I began as a photographer back in the mid 60s, around 1965, 66, I thought that this was a very important undertaking for me and anyone who aspired to be a journalist or a photojournalist, especially in regards to recording the struggles of people who are subjugated. And so I'm very proud. My grandfather was a reaction to the way this country has the systemic, the institutional racism in this country. And, more than just institutional racism, but I mean, I don't think it's a far-fetched thing to call it terrorism. African Americans have been subjected to terrorism throughout most of our history in this country. And so for me, I was just very motivated. When I was in high school, I studied the history of this country. We didn't call it critical race theory. We just called it American history. And the fullness and breadth of the history was revealed to the students in the school that I attended. And also, when I went to college, I had the opportunity to pursue it more. As a kid, I understood the dynamics of the post-colonial period in Africa. We talked about Patrice Lumumba. Malcolm X was in the community. Muhammad Ali was he was very close to our family for obvious reasons. I knew Muhammad Ali. I knew his brother Rahman very well. Muhammad Ali's brother Rahman married my first cousin Sandra. And Ali married a woman I had a crush on in high school. Belinda was her name. when I was in high school, and later on she changed her name to Kalila. So
You didn't take on Muhammad Ali for
no,
that?
I wouldn't do that. But I'm very proud of that history. As a young person, I would say that I was. It was a little intimidating because a lot of people hated the community, hated my grandfather, said that he was a racist, and I think that it's just like today with the backlash from critical from the teaching the fullness of American history in public and private schools. There's a resistance for changing institutions that have subjugated people of color. There's a resistance. I think I know why. Why there's this resistance to change things. But at any rate, I'm very proud of the history, and I think it's really helped me grow in photojournalism. And one of the reasons why I think I've had good fortune as a photojournalist. My career has been one of making all the right moves, and that's just, I don't know. You call it luck. I call it good fortune.
Well, good fortune, luck. We're lucky that you've been able to do everything you've done. And Doug says, so important to have evidence like Ozier's photos so that the true and awful history of American racism can be taught. And I hope someday history books will be the only place we will see racism. We are unfortunately a long way from that. There's a tweet, Ozier, that I saw recently that completely blew my mind. It said, in this country, we teach slavery as the history of Black people. We need to be teaching it as a history of white people. And that's where I think, once I read that and I absorbed it, I thought, oh my God, this is what we need to be thinking about. And not all white people, obviously, but certainly the history, the way it's taught matters in all of this. I do want to, before we get to the paper, because we want to talk about the paper, I do want to show the audience, first of all, just the thoughtfulness of Ozier, which it's coming through in this conversation, but something in an enormous coincidence. The day before you messaged me while I was going off on that flight to Durban and Cape Town. So what are the chances that I wrote 2 minutes before I was taking off, so I was about to board that flight. So that's a coincidence.
Oh, wow. Okay, yes.
And then if I go back up here, you had this idea about the Capital Gazette and what happened there, the awful shooting of those journalists. And you had this idea that what if journalists would attend the funerals of compatriots murdered at the Capital Gazette, the way cops do it, the way firefighters do it. And of course, we hope that it's not something we need to do very often. And I'm sorry to say I was taking off on a flight, so I couldn't be of help, but we had a good exchange around that. I was just wondering your thoughts on that. And again, we want to remember those Capital Gazette reporters and staff who were killed, shot to death by an angry person.
My thoughts are the same as they were when I wrote that, and that is we're a country which react to things that we don't want to accept with violence. We're flooded with guns. The Second Amendment is an acronym. Why do we even have it? But as far as showing some solidarity to show solidarity and support of people who are suffering from, the attacks that the institution of journalism has been under for quite some time now, and essentially that's what that was all about. That we need to show solidarity.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Very
right, so let's get back into the paper. But before that, we have a question from Stefan Kaplan, who asks, "What is my friend Ozier's favorite photographer of all time?" And I know that's a tough question. Maybe it's not tough. Maybe for you it's easy.
Yeah, no, it is a very tough question because there's so many that certainly have influenced me. I would say that probably there's probably about a half dozen. I can think of Roy DeCarava, a photographer that mostly dealt in the art realm. Gordon Parks, who actually spent a lot of time with Muhammad Ali, more than a year, and a lot of time with my family, who was a direct influence initially because I saw the results of his works in Life magazine at the time, which was like Facebook today. And he photographed my family, he photographed my grandfather, he photographed my cousin, my dad, Gordon Parks, W. Eugene Smith, the great essayist with Life magazine, also Margaret Burke White. There are just so many. Ellen Levitt, a street photographer. So I can't name one particular photographer, but my initial influence was Gordon Parks.
Awesome. So we want to just pick up the paper. I'm going to just kind of flip through it and would love your thoughts if anything jumps out at you, or you remember doing that version of the story, or you've been there, anything like that. It's very, very casual. Patricia says, thank you, Ozier, for speaking from the heart and living your purpose through profoundly felt photography. Beautifully put, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
And thank you, Ozier. All right, let's look at the front page. I do want you to comment, if you would, about the use of color and how it's changed over time since you were there, and you were there for the change as well.
Yes, I was. Yeah. Well, when I left Newsday had transitioned almost immediately when I joined that paper from black and white to color. So I was a little disappointed that I wasn't going to be working in black and white anymore. And then when I was hired by the New York Times in 1992, I said, yeah, black and white. I'm getting an opportunity to photograph the world in black and white again. And then about 2.5-3 years later, the paper transitioned from black and white to color, and I said, oh man. But I've gotten over that. I think that to see the world in color is seeing the world as it is. We don't see the world. I mean, our brain doesn't record the world in black and white. I think the color transition was a good one. We have to get used to it, and people are resistant to change, but I've gotten used to it, and
I have to tell you, when I was a kid, I did think the world used to be in black and white and turned to color. I saw a historical fiction, one of those one of those films set in like in the 1400s Japan, and it was in color. Yeah. And I was asking my mom, "What's going on here? Why is it in color?" I couldn't understand. Okay. All right, let's go into the paper. There's stories here about the infrastructure bill and what's happening with that.
Yeah.
And then this story: when the police call a car a weapon, a common defense in fatal shootings, but officers often aren't at risk. And we'll see that inside the paper as well.
Yeah.
And then
that's a powerful picture on page 1, and I wish that it might have been just a little bit bigger, because I think it's such an important story. Maybe more of a 4-column picture than a 3-column picture. The format is a little different. There's usually 6 columns across the front. I think there's 5 columns. I have the paper here.
Yeah, they have 6. It's 6 at the bottom, but 5 across the top. Yeah.
And so I think it would have been more dynamic if it was 4 columns, but because it's such an important story.
Sure.
I think it gives it more impact, and it catches eyes more readily if it was, I think, a little bit bigger.
And when you were at the Times, this ad, which is now Monica Rich Kosan, used to be the Tiffany's ad for 100+ years. They had that same
spot,
A3 section.
Yes.
Let's keep going. Let's see what else is in the paper. There is Preserving a Pilgrimage's Past on Foot and Hoof. This is in Spain. And look at this unusual ad. Dear new Americans, we're honored to welcome the 31,000 of you arriving from America and beyond. And this is from Ministry of Supply. Born out of MIT and Boston, we use science to make the most comfortable clothing on the planet. I'm not familiar with that brand.
Yeah. That Spain dispatch I thought was really, at least, of course, the website has a richer offering for photography for this particular story. And I think the photography is very dynamic. And our dear friend, I'm pretty sure, Jim Dwyer and an old colleague of mine named Paul Moses, who's still around, they both have taken this pilgrimage on this road.
They have
Santiago. They both took this pilgrimage. I'm so happy that Jim Dwyer had a chance to take that pilgrimage before we lost him.
And we, Neil and I, Ozier, Neil and I, and others on our team had the honor of producing, working with his family, the memorial service that hundreds of people attended, and we learned so much about the family. And big admirer of Jim. He was he preceded me at Columbia Journalism School by many years, so I knew him.
Terrific human being, and I was part of that memorial service. And it's good to know that you were involved in making that happen.
Thank you so much.
Terrific.
Yeah. Daily cloud of suffering. The Uyghur crackdown felt beyond China. Anguished relatives seek out therapy. So that, of course, is I've got to tell you, I've been so upset about trying to understand what's happening in China these days. With everything. So I've been reading Howard French's great book about China. It's just fantastic, and I think everybody should read it. Tanker truck crashes and explodes in Sierra Leone, killing 98. And strikers and Sudanese protesters calling for strikes. Sudanese protesters reject sharing power with the military. Report on clergy abuse in France spotlights the secrecy of confession. And that's a story that, of course, we have the shame in America of the same story as well. Ethnic violence rises in region. India is silent. And this is Hindus in Bangladesh protesting the violent attacks against them in Dhaka last month. So
very, very powerful image there. Very.
Let's just show that. I'll show it in a close-up so people can see it. And two generations trying to fix the climate crisis, and these are mostly females, decades apart on a climate fix. And so much happening there. Where states aim to spend those long-awaited billions. So this is part of the infrastructure bill that we saw on the front page. And can a turtle help save Puerto Rico's beaches? And the idea is, for those not familiar, that because the turtles nest on the beach, therefore maybe there won't be as much construction as there would be in other times. That's what they're talking about there. And bringing children together, bringing children's books that speak their language. And this is Black is Beautiful book project. Rashar Stewart and his mother promote stories that feature Black characters. This is the neediest funds initiative that they have at the Times every year. Many people may not be familiar with it, but I don't know, Ozier, if you did any work with them. Or
oh yes, I have. Quite a bit from.
Can you just explain what that is and how it's unusual for a newspaper that is very much off the record and everything else, doing something like that, raising money for local causes?
It's best to my knowledge that it always appears in the paper sometime around this year, just prior to the holidays, to people, as we move into the holidays, to think about, what our belief systems, propel us to do. And I think just about every belief system encourages people to be charitable. And so that's what this is all about, to help the needy. So don't forget about them. Yeah.
And I like you're reading the paper there, and I'm reading the paper here. We're trying something a little different right now because I was having some trouble with my camera. So
I need my glasses when I look at the paper. So I hope that's not too much of a technical problem. I know that
You look good. You look good,
A
Ozier.
color cast.
Yeah. And we both have the same amount of hair, so it's all good.
Yes.
I'm trying to adjust the lighting here. It's a little bit hard because I'm against these bright windows. No complaints.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Military jury shows its disgust over CIA torture. Bill includes money for communities to invest in climate resilience. Climate resilience, so important.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what else is going on. Again, the story about police officers calling a car a weapon, and they've recreating a fatal shooting here and explaining how all of that works. So that seems very important. Yeah. And then look at this: court temporarily blocks vaccine mandate for larger companies. Republicans love not controlling companies as long as it's not about the vaccine. Then they love controlling companies.
Yes, indeed.
All right, here we go. This is the obits. So tell me about obits that you have shot for, or people who I'm sure you read the obits like I do as well.
Yeah, I love the reading the obits because it's like capsule history. Yeah. You get a little summary of an era in the world. The history of the world. So I love reading the obits and individuals who had made impacts on the world. Where am I in the obit section yet?
Probably not. I was going a little.
Yeah. This. I have photographed funeral services or memorial services, and it's a very delicate situation. Sometimes you're invited in, photographers are invited in, and sometimes they're asked to wait outside or just stay outside the venue of the memorial or the church or whatever it may be. And I've had a lot of experience. Let me just put it that way. Yeah, a lot of experience covering. I see Ronnie Wilson passed away.
Ronnie Wilson, founder of the Gap Band. You might.
I was a big fan of his, and the interesting thing about it, I knew this a long time ago, but I'm glad the Times mentioned it, and that is he grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Black Wall Street was situated. And the history was recently revealed, I guess, recent, is relative, about, I didn't think, maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And they had a famous hit called You Dropped the Bomb on Me. And I didn't know that there was a connection between that song and the history of the bombing and attack on Black Wall Street, completely destroying that community. But there was a connection between that song, which was a very funky, danceable song, but there was a message in that song that I didn't get initially when it was.
It was a big hit. Yeah, it's a huge hit and stunning to understand that connection. And the word gap in Gap Band comes from Greenwood Avenue, Archer Street, and Pine Street in Black Wall Street.
Isn't that something?
And
wow.
And my former
fascinating.
My former student, Shamari Wills, has written a book about the first Black millionaires, and he talked a lot about this. And to be fair, I think there's now a lot more understanding about what happened, thanks to President Trump saying terrible things about it. So then people went back and researched. There's also the Watchmen series on HBO also had an impact. So in ways, at least the information's coming out. Whether we're taking action or doing things right, I don't know. But I can't think of another song that's as danceable and as kind of about romance, but having this terrible inspiration. It's kind of stunning to think that. So
yes, it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Ivy Nicholson, 88 model and Andy Warhol factory star.
Yes.
Has died as well. And William Conway is a conservationist, reimagined America's zoos. And we want to tell everybody who's interested in obits to check out an app called Miss You Graham. Miss You Graham. It's available on iOS as well as on Android. It's a great way to honor people who passed away. If I can be morbid for just 1 second, Ozier, one of the things they tell you when you win a Pulitzer Prize is that now you know the first line of your obituary is going to say Pulitzer Prize winner Ozier Muhammad has passed away.
Yeah, yeah.
If you hadn't won the Pulitzer, what would the first sentence, what would you have wanted it to say about Ozier Muhammad?
Well, I that's a good question. I think that I would want it to say that he was a good friend. You know, he really cared about friendship. Friendship was very important to him, family, and he wanted his folks, his ascendants perhaps, to go on after him to make sure that they understand their place in the world. You know, yes.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Understand their place and get as much information. Read, and that'll help us all move forward if we understand each other.
Wow, so well said, Ozier. And I put you on the spot, so I don't apologize for it though. But you were wonderful, and I loved hearing that. So everybody, imagine being asked that question. Go ahead, Neil.
I was just going to jump in as we're getting close to the 10 o'clock hour Eastern time. Sri, in terms of the other sections, could you go to the real estate section?
Sure.
That landmark in Harlem that was lost. I was wondering if Ozier could speak to that. That's the another landmark lost, this time on Astor Row in Harlem.
Yeah, I remember driving by it many times, many times driving by it. And I must say that I forgot that it was called Astor Row because I actually did a story for the Times on it many years ago, and I can't remember what the gist of the story was. But I also, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that there was a kind of a man who's either a priest in the Roman Catholic Church who had organized kind of an independent club for young adults, kids, where they could go and recreate and etc. And I used to see this gentleman riding around on a bicycle, this priest, with a herd of dogs that pulled his bike. It was like a giant tricycle. And he had a carriage on the back, like a carton on wheels that he would put things in that he might have collected on the street. I wish I could remember his name, but he was connected with those houses, the Astor houses in Harlem. I photographed him for Newsday, and it was I really loved the photograph, and somehow the negative was lost. I don't have a print of it, but it was pretty stunning.
Just showing as you're talking. Thank you for that.
Sure.
I'm just showing what the Times Magazine is about. During COVID, I think a lot of people had vivid dreams and unusual psychedelic dreams. And then
that's a very timely story because I certainly had them. My wife too.
Yeah.
This is a piece, Ozier, celebrating a building that has stood for decades as a symbol of the press. Was this where you were referring to? This is a story with David Dunlap.
Okay.
That you shot.
I have to put on my glasses again. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Is this in the magazine?
This was in the Times back in about 7 years ago. This is the Grolier Club. So this might not be the reference you were making.
Maybe not. I can't make the connection.
Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we start wrapping up here, we're in the style section, and there's the Philip Galland's column on etiquette that he writes. So this is a pop quiz. I'm going to read that. You don't have to find it. So I
love reading him.
Okay, good.
He's a panic.
Yeah. So I'm going to read the question, and then we're going to hear your answer. There's no right or wrong answer. So
sure. Okay.
All right. The headline is "So That Ring You're Wearing." A dear friend died recently at the age of 47. When she was ill, she tried to give me a ring of hers that I always admired, but I demurred. It felt grabby to take it. Now I see her sister is wearing the ring. Can I say something about her late sister's wishes to her? What do you think?
I have no answer for it. I have no answer. I don't know.
Okay. All right. My answer would be you should have stepped up at that time or said, I'll take it from you. Tell your sister I'll take it from her.
Okay.
Instead, I mean, she had the chance. Now she decided to give it to her sister. So how can you take it? Anyway, his answer is, I wouldn't. I understand why you refused the offer while your friend was ill, but you refused it. Now her sister, who is also grieving, has claimed the ring, most likely in honor of her late sister. Mourn your friend, but leave the jewelry out of it. I thought good comment. Thank you so much, Ozier. What we're going to do is we have a little bit of housekeeping, and we want to tell people about next week's great show as well. But we want to come back to you and ask you a couple of questions. One is, tell us why everybody who can get to New York between now and December 4th needs to go to your show at the gallery. So that's one thing. And then we have a lot of people watching who are journalists, writers, would-be writers. What can they learn from photography about writing? And we'll use that as a pro tip for our writers. So if you can, I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about both those things, and we'll come right back to you.
Sure,
thank you very much. And folks, that was Ozier Muhammad and another great show today with the New York Times Read Along. I want to thank Neil Parekh and our entire team. Let's give kudos to Neil Parekh, who is at Neil Parekh. Our executive producer, Paula Kiger, is at Big Green Pen in Tallahassee. Carla Baranakis is at Kabara in New Jersey, where everything is legal in New Jersey, we learned in Hamilton. Steve DeRive out in Philadelphia, and Julia Weeks is at Julia L. Weeks. She is in Brooklyn. And we want to thank all the great work that Carla does. We want to thank her and tell you all about her newsletter, The Local Connection. Please subscribe for weekly story ideas and pro tips for local reporters. It's at bit.ly/local news tips. And I recommend this to all my students, and all journalists should subscribe. You can learn how to take national, international story ideas and localize them. And we also want to thank our sponsors at Muckrack. Everyone, please check out Muckrack. And if you're interested in being a sponsor, please do sign up. Let us know. We'd love to talk to you about it. I'm also just going to put in a plug for my newsletter. Everyone, you can find it on Substack, srinet.substack.com. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the things that I write about, not just talk about here on this show. And Neil, I want to bring you back and thank you for a great episode and all the effort you put in to make this show possible. And there it is. This is my newsletter this week. So what happened was, Neil, last week I wrote, as you know, about signing a pledge for our company called Work Remotely Forever Pledge that says we'd not that we'd never have an office, but we would never force somebody to come in and work full-time in an office after having signed this pledge. And then a lot of people wrote back, including the director and CEO of the Norman Rockwell Museum in Massachusetts, who was very thoughtful, and Laurie Moffett wanted to talk about, well, there are people who don't have that option of being remote. They need to come in. And I thought that was really important. So do check out my newsletter, srinet.substack.com. And we also want to thank our sponsors there. If you just keep going, our sponsors there are the Armory Square Ventures, a VC firm that's doing something unusual. Creativity can come from anywhere. They're working to find startups in places that aren't normally seen for startups. And they're hiring. So anybody knows, please check them out. If you know a startup in a place that's off the beaten path, they will want to talk to you about that as well. And Neil, your thoughts on today's show before we bring on Ozier?
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I love about the show, Sri, when we get guests that have this incredible career, whether it's in photography, whether it's with the Times, we get a history lesson with our weekly show, which is great. So we really get a chance to delve into some of the details. Here's some of the backstory. And Ozier certainly did not disappoint. There was so much that we couldn't show. I tried to sneak in a few extra pictures along the way. That picture of Jesse Jackson playing basketball with Marvin Gaye. There's just so much. I certainly encourage people to check out his website again. There's just so much that you can find there.
It's also on digimentors.group. You've got a lot of the photos there in a gallery that people can look at. Paula is putting everyone's social media links in there, and Patricia says, "Thanks again for sharing through your lens, Ozier." Pun intended, and thanks to the entire production team for another digimentors.group.
And that's the website. So we do.
There.
You can see it kind of meta. This is the video on our website,
social media
the background, but then a slideshow of the photographs that we shared during the show.
The audio is coming through thanks to the entire production team.
About 30 seconds behind.
And that's exactly the website. So we do, but that's the just to show the slideshow that we have, links to the gallery exhibit, and again, we want to encourage people to go visit the gallery, the Keith DeLillis Gallery, which is exhibit Ozier Muhammad, Events That Changed the World. It's open until December 4th. So we definitely want to encourage that. Thank you, Sonny, for those great comments. Absolutely appreciate it. We also want to make sure people know about, before we bring him back, we want to make sure people know about next week's guest. Linda Greenhouse will be joining us, the longtime Supreme Court reporter for the New York Times, another Pulitzer Prize winner. She is a lecturer at Yale Law School now and president of the American Philosophical Society. She'll be our guest next week. And for folks outside the U.S., 1:30 p.m. GMT, 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time. But
she's a legend in journalism, and we're covering the Supreme Court, and she has a new book out, so much to talk to her about, and president of the American Philosophical Society, which is awesome as well.
Kudos to Carla, another great, she's done such a great job getting these guests, Ozier Muhammad, Linda Greenhouse, and later we'll have Clyde Haberman join us as well, another incredible figure in Times journalism history.
Before we bring Ozier on, I just want to say, even though this is a celebration of the New York Times, and we read that every week, we have and often read other papers as well. We did a Sun-Times, Chicago Sun-Times read along last week. We've done the Toronto Globe and Mail, Washington Post multiple times. And this is all really about news, information, accuracy, and journalism that we're celebrating. Everybody, please subscribe to a newspaper. It doesn't have to be the New York Times. It can be whatever you want, your local town paper. Please subscribe. It will make a difference in the fabric of this country being torn apart the way it has. That headline, I don't think I'll ever forget that headline, Neil, where it said it's close to zero, the base for Democrats in this country among rural white voters. That could be the floor. Not now yet, but it could go as far as that. And what does that tell you? And that's why, because they're not reading newspapers, they're reading Fox. So they're watching Fox and listening to terrible people on the radio, and that's why we're suffering.
Sure.
All right, let's bring Ozier back. And thank you, Ozier, for sitting through all of that. And I have a very important question before I ask you those other two. What does the music stand behind you?
When I was a teenager, we didn't have music education in our school, so but I wanted to learn how to play the trumpet. I bought a trumpet when I was about 15, and I studied until off and on, very sporadically. It didn't really do the homework till I was about 29. Never could accomplish much on the trumpet, but now that I'm retired, I've been studying the trumpet for 2.5 years, and I want to learn how to improvise. Music theory is kicking me right in the rear end, but I'm determined to have fun with the trumpet.
And that was Miriam asking the question about the music stand. Going to your Instagram page, this picture was I thought was just great. With the trumpet against with the shadow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything, right? You're working on the trumpet, but you see a picture like that, you have to figure out how to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just great.
Please invite us to your first recital, informal.
Okay, just don't bring any garbage and throw it at me.
All right, let's ask you those two questions. Number one, why should everybody we know tell everybody who can get to New York between now and December 4th? Why should they come to your show?
Well, I think it's the experience of being in an environment where pictures or sculpture or any two-dimensional or three-dimensional art is on display is a lot different from watching it or looking at it on a computer screen. It's just a different experience. And then my exhibit go through at least 4 decades, and it's kind of a sweep of history and important moments in our history, in my estimation, in my opinion. So I think that the experience of being in that room is much different from going to my website and looking at things. But I'd like for you to do both if you're so inclined.
And by the way, I just checked. If you don't remember the name of the gallery, everybody just search Ozier Exhibition NYC and it shows up. So it's the first result on Google. So that's been nicely put together. So everybody check that out. And there's a spelling of the gallery's name, Keith De Lillis. And tell us where it is so that if people are in the neighborhood.
41 East 57th Street. It's open from Tuesday through Saturday. The hours are 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
And if you're going to be there, one thing is if you're going to be there in the next, I'm sure you go in and out, but if you know you're going to be there and you tell us, we can tell folks to go find you and say hi.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, yeah. I hope to be there. Not this week, next week. I've been there quite a few times for sure. Yeah.
And look, Ellen gets it, and she now has the gallery. And Patricia says, so excited to go see Ozier's exhibit. So
thank you so much, Patricia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did we cover what the name Ozier means?
No, it's a when my birth certificate it was spelled differently, but it wasn't because my parents didn't spell it correctly. It's because the hospital did. But it's as I understand it, it's from a Coptic Christianity. It's like Amharic or something like that. It's from the Horn of Africa.
Did you say an ark? Did you say an ark?
Coptic Christian name from the Coptic Christian Bible, I believe.
Okay.
From the Horn of Africa.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we asked you to give us something that writers can learn from photographs and photographers and photography.
Well, I think that writers, and I think for the most part, writers are just trained in journalism. I think they're pretty well schooled in what the importance of photography to helping them explain the world or the community or reporting locally or internationally or nationally, whatever. So I certainly don't want to be pedantic about that, but I think photographers would like for writers to always advocate for photography to supplement their writing. I think it's important because the hook to a story, for the most part, is a great graphic or a great illustration or a great photograph. And just another little tidbit, because this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of photographers, that remember that we are partners, there's no tiers of importance. And so always refer to your colleague, your associate as my associate or my colleague instead of my photographer. I think that'll hold you in good stead.
Very, very nice. Thank you for that. Very helpful tip, and useful for people to think about, because we certainly hear people saying my photographer are and things like that. We have some great thank you comments and goodbyes. Neil, you want to show us? And then
Absolutely. You showed Sunny's earlier. Thank you for another great episode. Jonathan Borstein as well. Great show. Thank you. Therese Steiner saying thank you for the behind the scenes commentary on the photographs. Ellen Austin, thank you. Terrific. My mom, very good guest. And in addition to the photography, a lot of history as well. So thank
sweet.
you. You made my mom happy, Ozier.
That's so sweet.
Thank you.
That's very nice.
Patricia loved that picture of the trumpet that we showed from your Instagram account.
Okay.
And we just, again, thank you very much for joining us. Naomi Service also saying, well done, terrific guest. So again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for sharing both your experience and your love of photography, and just the breadth of history, and your comments about your grandfather and the African-American experience, the Black experience, everything. Just an incredible package today. Thank you. Laura Silverman as well saying thank you so much. Laura Silverman is a previous guest on the show from Philadelphia. Miriam Berkeley as well saying she's going to go to the gallery soon, so she's going to make it a point. So thank you, Ozier.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Carla, Neil, Sri. It's my pleasure. So it's such an honor to be invited on.
And as soon as the show finishes, folks, if you caught it halfway through, in just a few moments, you'll be able to watch it again wherever you're watching, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or our Digimentors website. You'll be able to watch the replay, and it's certainly worth watching the whole show. With that, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week with Linda Greenhouse. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ozier. You were awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Bye, everybody.